What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to teach you how to set up your RBG18S 18-inch powered subwoofer. This is the perfect sub to add the low end to any live performances, band rehearsals, DJ events, and much more. So as you can see, you get the sub itself and a power cable. There's also a 35mm pole socket on top that we can use to mount a stand to hold a speaker. There's also handles on each side and on the top of the sub, and wheels at the bottom so we can bring the sub to any gig or event. So now let me bring you through the controls of the RBG18S. Starting with the level knob, this is what we would use to set the level coming out of the subwoofer. Next we have the digital signal processor, which we can use to affect the DX sub and the low pass filter. The DX sub allows us to boost the bass by 3 dB if we have the switch flipped all the way up. If we have the switch flipped all the way down, we can extend the low frequency range, or we can keep it in the middle for an even low end. Below that we have the low pass filter. We have the options to set this at 80, 100, or 120 Hertz. And depending on which filter we have it set on, anything below that frequency is what we're going to be hearing coming out of the sub. For example, if we have it set at 80 Hertz, we're going to be hearing everything from 80 Hertz below coming out of the sub. And we can use the DX sub and the low pass filter together depending on what sound we want to hear coming out of the sub. Next we have the polarity switch. We would want to use this to reverse the polarity of our subwoofer to better sync up with our speakers depending on the placement. Now let's talk about the light indicators here on the sub. The power light will tell us when the sub is turned on. The signal light will tell us when signal is reaching the sub. The clip light will tell us if the sub has reached its peak volume and comes out super loud or distorted. And the limit light will turn on when the built-in limiter kicks in to protect the sub from peaking. And finally, we have a button that can turn the front LED light on and off. The RBG18S has 2 combo input jacks that we can use for XLR or 1/4 inch connections. And below that we have 2 XLR outputs so we can sync up to other speakers or subwoofers. And on top of that we have the RCA line inputs that we can use to connect anything with an RCA output. Now one of the ways we can set up our sub is with a powered speaker, so let me show you how to set that up first. Alright, so here I have the Titan 15 powered speaker that I'm going to connect to our sub. You'll notice that we're using the RSP36 to mount our speaker with the sub, which makes a great setup together for any live performances or DJ setups. Now to connect my speaker to the sub, I'll use an XLR cable. I'll take my female end and plug it into the XLR output on my speaker. Then I'll take the other end and plug it into the left XLR input on my sub. And because the sub has combo input jacks, you could use a 1/4 inch cable if your speaker has a 1/4 inch output. So now I can turn on my subwoofer, and then I can turn on my speaker. Then I'll raise the level knob on my sub, and because I'm using both channels for music playback on my speaker, I'll raise both of those volume knobs as well. So now let's hear how our setup sounds. Whoa! That is crazy! So much low end, you're getting plenty of high end from the speaker as well. Right, the room is shaking, you're definitely feeling that low end. That is awesome. Another great setup we can use with the sub is 2 active speakers and a passive mixer. So let me show you how to set that up next. Okay, so here I have my Titan 12 powered speakers and my passive mixer that I'm going to connect to the sub. So first I want to connect my mixer to my sub by using 2 XLR cables. I'm going to take the female ends and plug them into the main XLR outputs on my mixer. So I'm going to take the male end coming from my left channel and plug it into the left input on my sub. Then I'm going to take the male end coming from my right channel on my mixer and plug it into the right input on my sub. So now to connect my sub to my speakers, I'm going to take 2 more XLR cables. I'm going to take my female ends and plug them into the left and right outputs of my sub. Then I'll take the other ends and plug my right cable into the right speaker and my left cable into the left speaker. And remember, we can use 1/4 inch cables for this type of setup if we have that available because of the combo jacks on the sub. So now we can go ahead and turn on our mixer. Then I'll turn on my sub and then my 2 speakers. Now I'll raise the volume on my sub. Then I'll raise the volume on my 2 speakers. Then I'll raise the main left and right outputs on my mixer. And since we're using a channel on our mixer for music playback, I'll want to raise the gain and the volume knob for that channel as well. So now let's hear how this setup sounds. Woo! It makes a big difference with the 2 speakers because you're getting plenty of high end and you're still getting a lot of low end through the sub. So one last setup I want to show you guys is very similar to this setup, but adding an additional RBG18S. So let me show you how to do that next. Okay, so here I have my 2 subs and my 2 speakers that I'm going to connect to my passive mixer. So similar to our last setup, I'm going to connect my mixer to my 2 subs with a couple of XLR cables. I'm going to take the female ends and plug them into the left and right outputs of my mixer. Then I'm going to take the other ends and plug my right cable into the right input of my sub and plug my left cable into the left input on the other sub. So now I'll take another couple of XLR cables to connect my subs to my speakers. So for my right speakers, I'll connect the female end into the right output of the sub and plug the other end into my speaker. And then I'll take the female end and plug it into the left output on my left sub and plug the other end into my left speaker. So now I can go ahead and turn on my mixer, then I'll turn on my 2 subs, and then I'll turn on my 2 speakers. Now I'll raise the volume on both subs, then I'll raise the volume on my 2 speakers, then I'll raise the main left and right outputs on my mixer, and again we'll raise the gain and volume knob for the channel we're using for music playback. So now that we've got everything all set up, let's hear how it sounds. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your RBG18S 18-inch powered subwoofer. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.